Myself?
Standby machine. More computers back there that he uses. Probably think there's about 6 people.
There's now like 20. Okay. You have a weekly census?
One thing, Charles. No.
After all that,
And you
then
restarted all?
does it restart, and then it's like finishing an update, so then you have to wait for the updates.
Gotta be safe. Gotta have patches. Be secure.
All right. Have been informed that we are now live streaming. Okay, so we are going to get this meeting started. The time being 2:13 p.m. on May 31st, 2023. I'd like to call to order the special meeting of Kane County Public Service Committee. Clerk, please call roll for attendance.
Comes here.
Lewis. Miss Lewis,
Sorry, Lewis here.
Sturgis,
Present.
Cheppy,
Cheppy here.
Williams,
Williams here.
Sanchez,
Sanchez present.
Pirog.
Here.
You have a quorum in the room.
Okay. Approval of the minutes, May 18th, 2023. Someone asked for unanimous
Yes, for
consent.
your unanimous, makes unanimous request for approval of minutes.
Okay, Tepe asked for unanimous consent to approve the minutes of May 18th, 2023. Any objections? Hearing none, the minutes are approved. Before we go to any other section, I want to thank everyone for being here. It's been a long time leading up to this meeting here. We're going to move things around a little bit, and I'm going to, with the indulgence of the committee, move the public comment portion to the end after the other business section. The reason being because we want to get to the presentation from State's Attorney Mosser, and in hearing everyone who's been coming to this committee for the past few months, she realizes, there are many questions people have, and they don't get that kind of response time, that response moment in these meetings. You get public comment, you get to come and speak. We don't say anything back to you in that instance. So from her request, she wanted to give you all an opportunity to have a question and an answer follow immediately, rather than you just come up, speak, and then that's it. So we're going to start with the presentation from the state's attorney, and then we're going to go to the public question and answer session. So anyone who has questions at that point will be asked to come to the podium, ask your questions, obtain a response. And when we've exhausted all of those, we will then go to the public comment. And if anyone still has a comment that they'd like to deliver to put on the record, then we will do so at that time. So that being said, we are going to move on to other business. Presentation 2023 Consolidated Election Report. I'm going to turn it over to our state's attorney, Jamie Mosser.
Thank you very much. This presentation is going to go through a lot of details. If you have a pen and paper, I would highly recommend making notes of questions that you have. This presentation will eventually be put online so that you will have access to everything. So you don't really have to write detailed notes throughout all of this unless you think of a question during that time period. We're just going to wait for it to come up on screen. Okay. Thank you, Blair. So to start off with, I wanted to discuss that there are a couple of statutes that do grant my office the authority to perform such an inquiry. In this particular case, this inquiry came as a result of several different citizens' complaints that not only came through the mail, but also came via email. And then obviously I've been at the majority of the board meetings where many individuals have spoken and discussed this issue. As a result of that, and according to statute, I do have the authority to investigate any allegation or irregularity that may come out as a result of complaints made in regards to the election. Through that, the statute itself gives this power to the Attorney General's office, in which the state's attorneys then actually have the power to do so in their local jurisdictions, which is why I have conducted this inquiry into the consolidated election of April 4th. As you all know, at approximately 8:45 PM, when new voter totals came online, it appeared to double, if not more, the votes that had come in through the third time that the election results were updated. This happened when not a lot of precincts had come in that would justify such a high raise in the amount of votes. A short time later, then everything went offline. Eventually, when it did come back online, the totals that were put up were less than what they were at approximately 8:45. As a result of that, there were many citizen complaints and questions as to what happened during that time period. As a result of that, I did undergo this inquiry. My first step in the inquiry was on April 18th. I had a meeting at the county clerk's office with the county clerk, along with several members of his office. We also had members of my office within the civil division, and we had another member of, or we had the chairman as well as Mr. Sanchez, who were present for that meeting. During that meeting, we did discuss the complaints that were coming in, and we discussed my role in this and that I was going to open up an inquiry and what I wanted the next steps to be. Part of those next steps were going to be meeting with the county clerk's office directly and meeting with members of the IT department. And we do have people from the county clerk's office as well as IT here if there are any specific questions there. From that time period, I was able to get an agreement from the county clerk's office as well as IT that they would fully cooperate in the inquiry. And I can report that there is not a single person who refused to speak with me, who refused to provide us information, or refused to be a part of all of this. On May 8th, I had a meeting with the election division at the county clerk's office. This had myself present as well as State's Attorney Lead Investigator Chris Merritt. Mr. Merritt is sitting to my left in the blue Hawaiian-ish shirt. Investigator Merritt comes in with a significant amount of law enforcement experience. We're really lucky to have him at the State's Attorney's office. Prior to his retirement from South Elgin, he was the chief at the South Elgin Police Department, so he comes in with a significant amount of experience regarding investigations. While at the county clerk's office, we spent a couple of hours going through how a vote comes in from the very first till the very end when it's eventually put online and then certified. Throughout that time period, I was provided with additional documentation, and when I asked for other information, that information was provided to me without question. On May 12th, later that week, I had a meeting with the IT department. This was actually via Zoom. Again, myself and Investigator Merritt were present for that. And through that, we went through IT's role through the election process, as well as providing additional information, including a lot of the aggregate numbers that came out, the raw data essentially from the consolidated election. In addition to that, any document that came in, whether it was a voicemail, an email, a letter, or even hearing people at board meetings, I reviewed every single one. And if it was in an email version, I did respond back to people who had emailed with complaints about the election process. I also hosted meetings with several citizens who were willing to come in to talk to me about their concerns. And I took notes from those meetings and met with individuals, several of whom are here today. I collected documents from both the county clerk and the IT department, and we requested that there would be an election recount in regards to one of the particular elections, the one that the majority of the individuals had complained about or provided a screensaver to me. And we also reviewed a discovery recount that happened as a result of one of the candidates asking for a discovery recount. So to start off with, in terms of my investigation began, as you know, at the county clerk's office, where from the point that a vote is made until the point that it becomes a certified result in an election, we talked about how all of that happens. To start off with, the county clerk's office has a voter registration system, which is DFM. This is a system that connects all elements of the race that will eventually create it into a database. What we're talking about when we're discussing all of the elements of a race is that we have candidates and we have referendums, and not everyone is on the same ballot. So where I live in precinct 2 in Campton Township, I have a certain ballot type that's listed for me, and it will include candidates who are countywide. It may include some state candidates depending on where they're running. It may include a referendum. But where Mr. Sanchez is in Carpentersville, that is going to have some similar candidates and some similar referendum, but also different. And so what this system does is it creates a database that lists all of the different potential contested candidate races, as well as the different referendum that we have, and links them to their particular voting locations. This DFM system generates lists, and I listed those down below. So first of all, you have just a list of candidates, you have a list of the contested races, a district, and then it starts linking all of those together. And the reason why it does it is because this information is then put into a system called BOSS that creates this one main database, or the way that I saw it is one main ballot that has every potential issue that we have. When it goes into the BOSS system, and that's a picture of the screenshot, it is BOSS 4.3. This then separates out the candidates as well as the referendum into the particular ballot style that each of us individually will be able to get. And this system itself, as I said before, links everything to make sure that every single one of us, when we go to our voting, whether or not we do this vote by mail, we do this early voting, or we do the day of voting, is going to be able to give us who we are supposed to vote for, as well as any question that we're supposed to vote about. This BOSS system is in a secured room within the county clerk's office that limited people have access to in the county clerk's office. When I was in that room with Investigator Merritt, I had to be in that room with a person who had permission to be in that room. And again, that was for the purpose of the investigation to see all of these paths. In addition to that, it is important to note that this system is not attached to the internet in any way, and that is for security purposes so that nobody can affect how a ballot style is created or how everything is linked up. So here is where we get to the first identifiable issue of what happened in the April 4th consolidated election. The Hampshire Park District had a referendum question that was put on the ballot for only the Hampshire Park District, and that proposition was to increase the limiting rate. Now, this goes into a whole bunch of issues with PTEL, which has nothing to do with this presentation, but if afterwards you would like a couple hours of some incredibly boring PTEL discussions, I will be here. What this did, though, is when the DFM system linked it up to the BOSS system, it linked the Hampshire Park District up to the Hampshire Fire District, so that anybody who was in the Fire District got this question about the Hampshire Park District. But if you were just in the Hampshire Park District, but not in the Fire District, you did not see the referendum question. This was discovered early on in early voting, and then it was rectified by the county clerk's office almost immediately, to the point that no one who tried to pull a ballot to deal with the Fire District was negatively affected in regards to it. But what this also did is it created the need to have a second database. Now, remember, when I was talking about it from the beginning, this DFM system that goes into BOSS is creating one main system, one main database. And that's like a giant ballot that creates all the possibilities. Well, because that ballot is incorrect at this point for one point, and you can't just easily go in and amend it because it's already been sent out and it's already in place, you have to create a second one. And as a result of creating the second one, when it comes time to tabulate the votes, you actually have to fuse those together so you're not double counting anything. Now, there is precedent for the use of a program like Fusion. And I would like to discuss, first of all, this doesn't happen often and it hasn't happened in a few years, but we have had to use it, for example, when a candidate was not allowed to be on the ballot because they were ruled to not be allowed in an objection. And then a court comes back and says, no, that person should be on the candidate. I have to tell you, most of the time that litigation happens while we're right in the middle of early voting. So then we have to accommodate for such a situation, which is why we have a program like Fusion. So this is a program that has been used in the past. It has been used by other jurisdictions and had to be used in this particular case because there wasn't that link up of the Hampshire Park District to where it should have been with the Hampshire Park District. It was linked to the Hampshire Fire District. So when this was done and a second database was created, this second database was programmed into the MBBs, which are the mobile ballot boxes, to account for both of these different voting styles. So that meant wherever you were voting, you got the proper ballot. All of that information is then recorded within the MBB. And once voting is done, all of those boxes go back to the rally stations where those cards are taken out. Before they are taken out, they are inspected by members of the county clerk's office. And MBB has to have that red seal over it so that it shows that there is no tampering. That means from the point that it was sent out by the county clerk's office to point that it comes back to the county clerk's office, nobody has taken that out. And if that seal is affected in any way, then they know that there's some issue that's happening with that. These MBBs, once the county clerk's office verifies that there's been no issue with that seal itself, they take out the MBBs. Those MBBs are read at the rally stations. The rally stations are connected to the county clerk's office through a secured direct network. So again, this is a secured network that has been set up through our IT department to make sure that the only communication that happens is through these two rally stations to the county clerk's office. That secured network brings everything back to a tally computer. And that tally computer then is what's used to show what votes are coming in. Now, this is very important because I'm about to switch a lot of language that is semi-confusing, but once you see what language is being used by the county clerk's office and IT, it becomes more obvious. And so I want to talk about the tallies. The tallies that come back to the tally station are the votes that are coming in from the MBBs. What happens is that from this tally computer, the county clerk's office will put in a secured USB because again, now we're in a room that doesn't have any outside internet. And we're taking this information from a tally computer through a secured USB. And we're taking that secured USB to another computer where the Fusion program is on it. The Fusion program then takes the two different ballot styles, these two different databases on the MBBs, and they fuse them together. And the point of fusing them together is because you do not want to double count any votes. That is the point, because now again, we have to merge these two ballot styles together. The way that the Fusion program works is that when you are first starting the selection process, you click Create New, because that's creating the whole first portion of the database. For every subsequent one, when you are fusing all of the data together, you should click Existing, because then it doesn't do the double counting. And again, this is going to make a lot more sense as we go through the presentation because I'm going to actually show you mathematically what happened. This is what the Fusion program screen looks like. What you're going to see from this is that it automatically goes to new. In order to hit existing, you would have to then actually click on the existing before you then go forward for the next. And this is an important fact because this is what causes the next potential issue that we have, or the next issue that we have here. The Fusion system, as I said, combines multiple databases. In this case, we had two different databases that had to be combined together. The first time that it was put through this program, everything went well. The second and third time, again, that existing button was hit, so everything went well. The fourth time, and this is due to human error, not to computer error, this is where we find our second identifiable issue. And when this happened, as you saw before, and I want to click back to it, you'll see it goes to new. What happened is when we put the info, or when the county clerk's office put the information in for that, it didn't click, the person didn't click to existing, instead it just stayed at new. And as a result of that, that's when we saw the spikes in the votes. Eventually, what happens from there is that once the Fusion system fuses everything together, that goes onto its own secured thumb drive. That secured thumb drive is given to county IT, and then county IT uploads it into the system. And that's how throughout the night you see the totals going through. At the time that this is given to county IT, there was no information given that the wrong button had been pressed. So county IT merely put up the information that was provided on that secured thumb drive. Eventually, it is discovered what happened. And my guess is probably people were coming and discussing that there was a big jump and yet not a jump in the precincts that were reporting. When this error was advised to County IT immediately took everything offline so that they could provide the accurate numbers. And so from the point that they took it offline, they weren't changing numbers because again, remember the tally numbers are the votes. Those haven't been affected. It's the tally numbers that go into the runs that were affected. So I want to talk about this. The biggest one that was emailed to me is this race that we had for the Geneva School District 304 for a 4-year full term. And I want to explain what this chart looks like. This chart lists all of the candidates who are running for the Geneva School District. And for purposes of all this, I am going to just look at the numbers for Paul Rydlinski just because he's the first one that's on the list. EV means early voting. So the first numbers that went out were as a result of early voting. And those numbers were 460 votes for Mr. Rydlinski. We did not include tally 1 and tally 2 at that point because we didn't have any issues that were going on with those. We just go right to tally 3. You should know that tally 3 adds in all of the votes. So by the time tally 3 comes up, we're at 1,060 votes for Mr. Rydlinski. I want to differentiate that between run 3 and run 4. Run 3 and run 4 are what happens after we go through the fusion program. Run 3 and run 4 is what's put on that secure drive and eventually given to county IT for a county IT to put online for all of us to witness as we're watching the votes that are coming in on election night. And here is we see the ultimate problem that happened. Again, early voting, you're going to see that first number of 461 votes came out. Run 1 goes up to 769 votes. And that's not abnormal because we're getting some more of the early votes are coming in or maybe mail-in votes during that time period. So it doesn't go up very much and we don't have any of the precincts reporting at that time period. Run 2 comes in and now we have 6 different precincts that are in and you see it goes up more from 769 to 1,379 votes. We have run 3 where again, now we have 10 of the 25 precincts that are coming in and this is 1,521. So keep in mind, as all of this is happening, the fusion program is being used correctly. The correct button is being pressed. So then you go to run 4, and this is where the issue comes in. I want you to note that the difference between tally 3, so the amounts at tally 3 are 1,060 votes, and the amounts for tally 4 are 1,207 votes. That means between tally 3 and tally 4, there's a difference of 147 votes. That's all that comes in. Now, if this was done correctly, what would have happened is the 1,407 votes, 147 votes would have been added to the 1,207 votes. But instead what happened is when you press the new button, it added the 1,207 votes to the run 3, which totaled, as you can see over there, 2,728. So I want to slow this down again because this took me several hours of working with IT to really understand the math behind all of this. Tally 3 and tally 4, those are our votes. Run 3 and run 4 is where you're adding everything together and you're going to put that online. When you are adding votes from tally 3 to tally 4, you're seeing that there's this difference. This is how many additional votes have come in when we have gotten this, which is 147. The 147 votes should have been added to the run 3 that we had, but again, that's not what happened in this particular case. Instead, they took all of tally 4, which was 1,207 votes, and they added that to the 1,521, which is the run 3. That's how we see the difference in the number. So it should have been for run 4, a total of 1,668 votes, which would make sense given that only 6 additional precincts came in during that time period. So going on to another candidate race that was again up for an issue. And so this is Geneva School District 304, and this is for the unexpired 2 term. And again, I'm just using Miss Bellino as an example because she's the first one on the list. Again, you see early voting starts out, you go to the run 1, run 2, and run 3 in regards to everything. And then we come to the problem, which is run 4. Between tally 3 and tally 4, these are just the raw votes coming in. The difference is 155. 155 votes should have been added to run 3 for a total of 1,905 votes. But instead, the total of 1,264 votes were added, which comes to, again, as you can see, 3,014 votes. So you're starting to see that every single time, well, not every single time, because one time the button for fusion was presented, all that it does is it took what came up for tally 4, which included all the votes from tally 1, 2, and 3, and puts them into tally 4 and adds all of that. So you are double counting votes at that point. The same thing continues to happen as we go into the St. Charles School District. Again, just using Ms. Van Heil as the example because she's number 1. You go through all of the early voting. You go through run 1, 2, 3, and 4. And then you get to run 4, where again, the numbers increase significantly, even though we haven't had a great increase in terms of the precincts. You're going to see again, mathematically, this is the same thing that happened, that the tally 4 amount to 2,517 was added to run 3, and that total was 2,920 votes. It should have been only 783. So again, the fusion system isn't working because it thinks it's creating a whole new database as opposed to adding it to what it was before, which is why we see the issue that we have. The last election that we're going to talk about still goes with the St. Charles School District. Again, Mr. Lentz is being used as the example for it. Again, you're going through the early voting, the runs 1, 2, 3, and then we get to run 4, where again, a significant increase happens. And again, this increase should have only been by 821 votes, but instead it was by 2,600 votes. And so mathematically, if you go through all of this, the same thing happens where what they did is they took tally 4 and added it on to the last amount that they had, which is called run 3. So we see where the issue was and how it looked to individuals when they were looking at it online. On top of all of that, we, as in the state's attorney's office, requested that there be a recount done for the Geneva School District 304. And by far and away, out of all the complaints that I received, that was the school district in which, or that was the election in which people had taken a screenshot and wanted to talk about what happened. The clerk's office did that recount. They did that recount with investigator Merritt being present so he could watch the entirety of the entirety of the recount. And there was both a Democratic and a Republican person there to witness everything. That recount came back and matched exactly the results that were eventually certified by County Clerk Jack Cunningham. One of the candidates for the city of St. Charles, Ward 2, also requested that a discovery recount happen, and we were able to review that discovery recount. That discovery recount again matched exactly the certified results that were given out by County Clerk Cunningham when he decided to certify the financial results, or the final results. What's important to note in all of this is, again, that tally, that original tally that has the votes, were never affected by the fusion program. Because remember, the tally program, those results are put onto a secured thumb drive, which is put into the fusion program. And the fusion program then creates these numbers. So our original tally numbers, our original votes, were never affected by any type of a computer system and never affected by any type of a human error. Those remained untouched and unaffected by what happened. The only run that was affected was run number 4. And again, that was done by human error by pressing that, by keeping it at new and not changing it to existing. The runs are done to give people a real-time sense of what's going on in the election. This is something that both the IT department and the county clerk's office has taken upon themselves because as a candidate, I can tell you, we want to know those results at 7:01, and most people also want to know those results. And so this is something that they do to try to do an extra benefit to our community. Once the results were discovered, they were taken down immediately by IT because IT didn't want results that they knew to be wrong out there. Well, what ended up happening was they went back to the tally numbers, put it through the fusion number correctly, and then they were able to get the correct numbers. And the other important to note is anything that's done on election night are unofficial results. The day after are unofficial results. The county clerk's office is charged by statute that they have to certify those election results within 2 weeks after the election day and after the state randomly selects certain races for them for retabulation. And those are random races so that the state can be sure that the election is being done properly in counties. Those were in fact retabulated. And again, those results matched the certified elections that were put out by the county clerk's office. So my findings are twofold. The first finding is that there were two issues that were found as a result of the consolidated election. And the first one was the issue with the BOSS system where it linked up the Hampshire Park District to the Hampshire Fire District. Of that, they immediately rectified it at the county clerk's office and no voter was affected. And by creating this second database, the second ballot, it was able to be rectified so that everyone voted correctly or on the correct ballot. The second was a human error. And again, that human error was in not selecting that existing and instead selecting next. But it never affected the tally numbers. And the tally numbers are what we are concerned with because of those are the actual votes. So the ultimate finding is that despite these two issues, there was no tampering with the election and that the results as certified are valid. Now, with that being said, it doesn't mean that we can't do better for the future. And upon talking to the county clerk's office has committed to the following. The first is that they're going to put an extra procedure in place regarding confirming both candidates and referendum when they're creating the ballot. Because remember, our first issue is that the referendum itself for the Hampshire Park District wasn't linked up in the right way to the Hampshire Park District. So they're going to put an extra procedure in place. Now, a lot of that was affected because of the redistricting that we just did in 2020. So the county clerk's office is confident that this is hopefully an anomaly in terms of what happened. In addition to that, if we have to have a secondary ballot or even a third ballot, they're going to have an extra procedure in place in regards to using this fusion program to make sure that something like this doesn't happen again. They have agreed to work with my office in regards to election judge materials and election judge training. And I want to be very transparent about this, that through a lot of my meetings with the citizens and through a lot of the communication, in addition to the complaints about what happened on election night, there were complaints about the entire election process, especially involving election judges, ability to be at the facility for people like poll watchers. I brought these concerns to the county clerk's office and they listened to these concerns and they have agreed that from this point going forward, we're going to work even closer together to make sure that any training material given to an election judge will be fully vetted by my office. Any questions or question and answer sample ones will again be fully vetted by my office. And I can tell you that's already been submitted to my office for review and that we will be a part of any election training judge from this point forward. Can you give me? Sure, I am 2 slides from being done, if that helps. Okay. In addition to that, we're going to help create standards for each election site so that election judges will be seated in a certain place with poll watchers consistently throughout King County, also being seated near election judges so we can make sure not to have any issues in the future because standardization is the way to go. I also have a commitment to all of you. I will review with my civil division all training documents. We will help to provide these standards for election sites. We will be involved in all of the training of election judges, and we are going to work to provide extra staffing from my office for early voting as well as election day so we are there and we are boots on the ground able to respond if there's any particular issues. And we're going to continue to document any calls or complaints and bring those to the community as soon as possible thereafter with reasons why or decisions on how we can rectify any problems if they're happening in the future. So as promised, that was 2 slides and now I'm done and available for questions.
Hold on, sir. First, if we could take any questions that committee members may have before we go to the public. I don't know if there are any burning questions since this is a committee meeting. Okay. I don't know how many people may have questions, but if you would like to line up at the podium and we can just start addressing those one by one. If you can, just state your name and state's attorney and staff will be happy to answer.
Good afternoon and thank you. My name is Andro Lorario, King County resident since 9/11. The questions I have are twofold, and I'm glad you did this investigation. Boy, I wish you and I would have sat down together and spoken about some of these things. I'm sure you have a lot of the information we gave you years ago from Stephanie, right, Rasco? And so, well, let's talk about Fusion first. Earlier, before you got into Fusion, explaining how it's really about the way the votes are counted, you had mentioned something about candidates and how there's a possibility that some candidates that were going through a court situation may have been off and on. What I'd like to know is, and I don't know if you know this, but I was asked by Jack to be election security one time, not last election before that. And there were a lot of fun things that happened that night. Power going out, my monitor going out on me, finding out that there were 2 judges with Democrat and Republican badges. Yeah, there's a lot we can talk about. But does Fusion affect the ballots themselves in a sense of candidates being left off of ballots?
So my understanding is no. What the DFM system does is the DFM system through BOSS is what creates that one large database, but also links the particular ballot style.
But it has nothing to do with candidates running for Congress or in a primary that are running for being left off of ballots.
Fusion does not.
Okay,
If a person is not on a ballot.
Yeah.
What that could be, much like what we saw with this Hampshire Park District,
Mhm.
is that candidate wasn't linked up in the way that they should be.
now is it possible for 2 candidates to be left off at the same time?
In my 20 years of working, everything is possible. I wish I could.
Because I mean, I know that, I'm sure you're aware that Mark Carroll and Andrea Haig were left off of ballots in certain precincts, certain voting areas.
Is that for this election?
No, that was the previous before that. That was the one where my monitor went out on me.
Okay, I'm
Um,
not aware of that, but I am more than willing to meet with you
Yeah.
in my office to discuss this.
The other thing that and I'm glad that you got together, and this is not, by the way, for the record, guys, because you guys all know who I am. I'm the chairman for Republicans in King County. I'm not here to attack my friend Jack, okay? What I am here to do is get some answers. That was an issue. And by the way, when I asked about that whole situation, it was explained to me as a Fusion problem. I didn't know what the hell they were talking about, because then again, the power went out, my monitor went out. They had all sorts of stuff going on that night. And so I found it odd that, those things were going on. And the other thing is, I don't know if you know this, but they went around to a lot of the townships and did a presentation on the whole system and how everything works. And one of the things that we found interesting was in that election manual, the election judge manual that you're talking about, there was a specific question or answer in there in where if somebody had a spoiled ballot, in other words, if they received a ballot and decided not to use it, they're supposed to, when they go vote, the judge will say, hey, you had a ballot, you requested, where is it? They're supposed to turn it in. They were being instructed to let the people vote anyway, that they did not have to turn them in. Now, I'm not a lawyer. That's why we have you. Okay, the wonderful lawyer that you are.
Thank you.
And I believe that they were supposed to be turning these in. Okay, so that's something that we thought through promises. Now remember, promises. There were people that came to our different townships, gave a spiel, and promised us that was going to be taken care of, and then it was not. And that's probably why you guys hear a lot of these stories about some of my wonderful poll watcher friends and how there's this sort of combative nature between them and election judges. It's not the poll watchers and it's not the election judges. It's the training. It's how they're being trained. They're being trained to do the things that are wrong and illegal. Okay. And so that's an issue, and I'm watching and I keep on hearing about all these different things that went on this election and the election before that. I don't know if you guys know, but I was involved in some things. You guys have heard the story, some of you, about me knocking on the door of a ballot that was cast as a vote and finding out that the old man was dead. You guys heard about that. And if you didn't, I'll present that to you.
Please.
About, counts, tapes, receipt tapes showing 0 people voting and then data showing that people did vote. So all these things went on. Now we have all this. So here's the problem. The problem is These are all little mistakes, human error, little mistakes here, election department, right? We're spending all this money and we're getting more money and we're requesting more money. And now we're getting money for awards, I believe, right? And the system isn't better. Imagine you're a business owner, a lot of business owners. If I tell you that you're going to invest 10, 11, $15 million on a machine that's going to help your business go more efficient, run better, and then the damn machine breaks down. Imagine that. Okay. That's what's happening here. We keep on spending money and all we keep on hearing is human error, mistakes. This can happen. I can't tell you how many times I've been told, what are you going to do? It's human error. Things are going to happen. We need to invest another $11 million to make that system, which is an award-winning system, better. That's where these people here have a problem. The problem is not Jack. It's we're investing and we're getting all this money into systems that just aren't working. Go back to the paper ballot. DuPage County did it. Go back to a simpler system, okay, where we don't have to rely on all this stuff and we don't have to keep on spending money to upgrade a system that's supposed to be an award-winning system. I mean, call me crazy, but I mean, give it some thought. So I'm glad that you're going to do this investigation. I'm glad that you're going to be, in touch. And you know what? I want to thank everybody here because this wouldn't be going on if it wasn't for you guys. This investigation would not be going on. I want to thank Dave Young as well. Thank you.
Hi.
Yeah. You have a question for me?
I do have a question for you, Gums.
Yeah.
I was writing down some notes. You said it was Mark Carroll, and who was the other person?
Andrea Haig.
Andrea Haig. Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
I'm just curious, is there going to be a time for comments or is this the time?
This is the question and answer portion.
There will be one later.
So there will be a public comment
Because
section.
it seemed like he used his time rather to make a statement.
Do you have a question? Do you have a question, sir, at this time?
Well, that's why I'm asking how to use my time
Okay.
best. I'll wait till later when you actually. have
Okay, thank you.
comments. Thank
Does anyone else have any questions at this time? Please approach the podium.
And I just, Mr. Andrew, if we can meet afterwards so I can talk to you about this, I would appreciate it.
Andrew,
I just wanted to see if you were going to stay after so I could talk to you further. Oh, and this I appreciate. Thank you.
Yes, I have a question about USB flash drives. Are they used in the election? And if so, if they're used, is there a chain of custody that is kept with them? And so I'd like to know, and who uses them? Because I know election judges do not use them. My husband was an election judge, and I don't think he told me, no, they never had any USB flash drives. So I've heard that I have it on good authority that yes, USB flash drives are used. And so I want to know if those are tested beforehand and if they each have a unique ID on them, like a number, some way to identify each individual drive separately, and who has control of those. Can anybody answer that?
Mr. Pollock, do you have an answer to that one? All right, then we can ask IT if you're aware of the security of those USBs.
so the drives that they're talking about are not
You
used.
identify yourself. for
I'm
the
sorry, I'm
record.
Roger Fonstock, the Executive Director for IT and Building Management. So the tabulation systems that Ms. Mosser spoke about, which are everything from the E-Slate to the judge's booth controller back to Rally and Tally, all through that process, there is no USB drive. It's closed system, and they're counting within a certified election system with the state of Illinois. So it's not involved in any of that. It's when you want to take the export from the system to post it to a website. It's on a closed system, just as everybody fears about internet access and someone compromising something. It's on a closed system. So we use a USB drive that takes the export file and they transfer it to a machine that we can upload it to a web server.
So they are used, USB flash drive.
Not in the election process.
No,
They're
after the-
after.
And are they tested beforehand to make sure they're totally empty? And also, do they have unique ID numbers on them so that they can be, a chain of custody can be kept for them?
Yeah, I think our position is we use new ones for this process. I'd defer. We're not in the room using them when the election staff hands
then-
it to us.
My other question was, who does use these? Who has access to those?
So I think that the election staff would have to answer that. They handle them and then we ultimately get them just to post the web results, which is the after the fact.
So part of when I was in the secured room, the USB drive that is used goes from, remember, the rally stations send the numbers to the tally computer. And now we're in a secured room where it's not by internet access, and there's only certain county clerk employees who are allowed access to this room. It is secure. I walked in there. You have to have a certain badge to get in. I think at some point even County Clerk Cunningham came over to tell me something and someone had to let him in, but I'm only guessing he didn't have his badge at that point. And so what ended up happening is from that tally computer, they take a USB drive, take that and put it into this computer that has Fusion. The Fusion is supposed to do what it's supposed to do to get us our final numbers. That's put on another USB drive. And that's what's ultimately given to IT to upload into the system, because there's no way to send it out because of the secured nature of everything.
So there is their chain of custody on those USB drives.
It's between two people in a room. So
It doesn't matter. It still has to
I
have
don't know.
chain of custody.
Yeah.
I guess we'll have to ask for that information, right?
So I assume the election staff would be in here, so I don't know if Mr. Raymond Escobar is listening on the Zoom, if he could zoom in to address some of these issues. Kind of going off of that question, Roger, maybe this is something you can answer, maybe not. If a USB, let's just say, has some sort of a virus on it and it connects to the tallying system, is there a possibility of a transfer of data into that system where the votes are kept? Is it a one-way street?
I believe that the machines are set up to only read and write to the USB drive.
Mhm.
So I don't know if I could answer whether or not there's, any particular vulnerability on the machine. I will tell you the machines are old.
Mhm.
They're older machines. So
Do you have any other questions at this time,
No,
ma'am?
that's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
I mean, I'm still not satisfied with these answers because
Oh.
there doesn't seem to be any chain of custody or any identity on these. But thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Sturgis, you had a question?
Chairman Sanchez, thank you.
I use your microphone, please.
Just so, Raj, if you can help me out with this.
Sure.
We're talking about using a thumb drive to gather information from the one machine to get to the other in a secured room. Are we talking about there's 300 people in this room or there's 2 people in this room?
there's generally a couple election staff, election judges. There might be a person from the actual consultant that is available. I'm sorry, I did. The nature of it is that there's people there that are election judges, election staff, and they're running the tabulation machines. And they have to get the results that are in an export file off of that machine that's not on the network. So there's only, one way to do that. And I think as we had stated, we try to use a new USB drive. I don't know what the election staff does, but that's up to the election staff. They're in there counting, doing the tabulation. We get the byproduct of that afterwards.
But it
Posted
could
to the
be,
web.
it could be 10 people-ish in the room.
Less than 10, I would say. I don't think 10 people would fit in that room.
Okay, okay. And there's only one person taking that drive from this machine into that machine. But we
Generally
said- what
speaking,
The nice lady said, chain of custody.
yeah, they know.
Not
who's
like,
in-
we're not like handing it around to 13 people, right? It's
No.
coming here and going there. Is that?
There's a person operating the fusion machine or the tally machine, and that person would hand it off to the person that would upload it. I think it's actually elections that uploads it.
So, and I think I understand the question about chain of custody, being a lawyer and trials, when you have something that could be the same as something else, you want to make sure that the something that you have is the same thing that ends in the end result. I understand that it's the difference between fungible and readily identifiable evidence. So this is something that I can raise to the county clerk's office in regards to policy and procedure, and making sure that one, hopefully maybe it's in a procedure, that the only time that you're going to use a USB for this is that it's new, that USB has an identifier on it and it's documented. And these are suggestions that I can make through this, because I do understand the question you're asking. Microphone, please, just so everyone could hear.
I'm just going to add that according to CISA, everything that is used in an election has to have a chain of custody record of all the transfers, the use, who used it, where it went to, and if there was information that was relayed, how that information was relayed, according to the Cybersecurity Infrastructure and Security Agency. So if we're using flash drives and we don't have chain of custody on those flash drives, they're so easy to hide. They can hide in a pocket. I'm not trying to accuse anyone of doing anything that's wrong, but we have to have these safeguards in place all through the election, or you cannot be comfortable with it. There's a room for. Thank you.
In addition to safeguards, my question relates to transparency.
State your name first, please.
My name's Devin Corbett from Aurora. And relating to transparency, I'm wondering in this particular case, if there was anybody, a poll watcher, or what could be likened to a poll watcher, a public, an observer from the public in the room might have been useful to catch any mistakes like this that might happen. I know poll watchers are allowed by law to closely observe all election materials without touching them, obviously, in the polling place and in the clerk's office, viewing the vote by mail process. But I'm wondering if poll watchers are allowed to view the tabulating process close up and maybe even, make sure that the operation is going smoothly, just from a public standpoint as an observer.
That's a great question, and one I don't know that I have the answer to by statute, but I will look that up. It is my understanding that there's always a Democratic and Republican judge that's in the room. I have never heard that particular question posed, but let me look into it.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Hello. My name is Bruce Matuszak and.
If you could bring the microphone down just a little bit, they're not very sensitive.
Telling me I'm short?
No, just adjustable.
He does it to me all the time, don't worry.
Okay, some of these things have been touched base already, but I took some notes and you kept referring to these secure USBs. And how is it verified secured? I mean, you go to Staples and buy 12 of them for $10 and hand them out, and here you go, guys. What's on that thing before it goes in that machine first? Nobody knows. There's no identifier, there's nothing there that says that's secure, and there's not something on that before you even start. And then the people could have good intentions. Here's your USB. They have no idea what's on it. They just use it. It's just not right. It's a terrible way to do things. And the other thing is this, the training manuals for elections for your judges. I would like that manual be the manual from the state, complete manual from the state, not what you guys pick. One here, we want to use this, we want to use that, we want to use this. Because as a poll watcher, I would bring things to people's attention, and all I would get is, we don't do it that way. I never heard of that. We're not trained that way. And it's wrong. Okay. Thank you.
Hello there. My name is Russ Nyes, and I've got quite a bit of experience in writing software for airplane cockpits in both military and commercial, and designing systems that communicate with each other. And as such, you can imagine that data integrity is paramount, because that's the one area you certainly can't afford to have some piece of data get information wrong, because the results could be disastrous. And in that regard, I was listening to your commentaries about the age of the machines and the process of part transferring the data from one machine to another using USBs. USBs are okay, but they have to be understood for what they are. Just because USB is new does not mean that all of its data will be have high integrity. There can be bits within USB stick itself that are what we call soft. You write to it once and it comes through, let's say you write a 1 and it comes through as a 1 and you read it a couple of times, all of a sudden, ooh, it's a 0 now, because the mechanism that happens inside USB drive didn't, you might say, stick that bit as securely as others. You can have little failures like that in any system. It doesn't matter whether it's USB stick or hard drive or anything. I'm sure we have all had our Windows crash at one point or another because mysteriously some bytes went away. Well, that can happen on a USB drive as well. And it can happen on a brand new one or one that's 10 years old. It doesn't matter. There are defects in the manufacturing that can show up. So unless you have a system in place that, one, when you download the information from the source file, like you're saying, you export it into the USB stick, unless you have assurances that there's verification on that data can be read back and verified to be exactly correct. The data that you're putting on there, you have no idea whether it's correct. There's no way to tell. You have to verify it back to the source as a secondary process to prove that it's correct. Also within the data itself, you can embed integrity, things called a CRC, which is kind of a complex mathematical thing, but it allows you to, with high degree of certainty, assure that all the bits of that entire file are correct. And I'm hoping that those things are been deployed on these quote older machines, may or may not be. Same process should be on the receiving end. It needs to be received. It needs to be verified that it comes in, and there should be some cross integrity check back to the source to verify, let's say, something called a checksum or a CRC value that they both calculate and agree upon. Then you have a high degree of confidence that the data is correct. So unless you have all these, at least some of these systems in place, there's no way you can tell that the data you put on USB on one end comes out the other correctly. And that's just a fact of physics. So I just wanted to make that commentary. Thank you.
Did you have a question, sir?
Oh, well, I guess my question would be, what system do we have in place on these USB sticks to assure that the data has high degree of integrity? Are there mechanisms in place, or is it just raw data? If it is, that's the Wild West. You can't determine whether the data is accurate or solid or not. There's no way to determine that unless you, like by hand, compare one to the other. So what systems are in place to assure the integrity of the export of one system is properly going into the other system, the BOSS and your Fusion system? If there's errors in that, the whole system is in question. And I don't have a real comfortable feeling with what I've heard so far. So that's my question is, what mechanisms do we have in place to assure the integrity of the data?
So I unfortunately can't answer about the USB drives. That is not something that we looked at. What I ended up doing is I analyzed the raw data that went from the rally stations to this tally machine to look at what the total was and to compare that to what it eventually was in the Fusion system.
Okay.
And so as a result of that, I didn't look into the security of a USB drive from here to there
I
because
understand.
the analyzing the raw data here matched what the Fusion data did here when applied properly.
That could be true, and that could be a lucky shot at this time, but because you looked at it, you gave it some additional integrity, but that's not what happened with all previous elections. So the question is, are they accurate?
I understand. And I wish I could answer that question. That may be something if we can at some point. And again, I'm going to bring all of this stuff to the county clerk's office because I think what you're raising is valid. I think these are great questions. I work in a job where evidence means everything to me. And so these are things that I am taking notes for to make sure to bring back to them.
Yeah, the point is that none of these things are difficult to do, but if they're not done, you don't have integrity. I mean, they could be easily applied and incorporated if they're not there, and ought to be looked at by somebody and put in place so that we got some integrity and insurance, you might say. So, thank you.
Thank you.
we will get responses from the election staff. A little disappointed they're not here today. I'm not sure why that is. Maybe it was a scheduling conflict. But all these questions that we're not able to answer today amongst ourselves and staff, we'll have those for you at our next meeting, hopefully. Sir.
Hi there, I'm Ken Zitko from St. Charles. And I got two questions. One, we're talking a lot about procedural kind of stuff. So I'm hoping that we've captured or we will capture the current set of procedures and policies so we can have a baseline and understand what we're doing as we make changes and move forward. Because if we just later acknowledge that we have some, they may just be the same policies we're using now. So we'd like to know where we're at now so we can identify, what we're fixing along the way. And then I guess that's more of a statement than a question, but at any rate, the question is, I thought I heard Roger use the term consultant as he talked about the people who might be in the room, the super secure room. So I just wondered if I heard that right. Was that accurate? Do we currently have consultants that get that level of security? And when you say consultant, do you mean like an election consultant or do you mean just an IT consultant?
This is Roger. Do you want me? So the Hart InterCivic is the manufacturer that made the election system.
Right.
And on an election night, there is often a person from support from Hart InterCivic at the clerk's office. If we have a particular issue, they can jump in and get support on the phone, help us get through that issue. So that's the person that I'm talking about.
All right. So I guess I guess that's it for now. I have a comment for later, but I'll save it for later.
Thank you. Any other questions at this time?
Hi, Mark Avalar of Algonquin. I will do my best so you don't have to do your Larry King impersonation and keep it to questions. And I've been jotting them down, I've been scratching off, but I want to pursue with Mr. Fonstock the interactive consultant. So Hart Interactive is the vendor. And outside of Hart, there are no other third-party consultants that are involved with the election process. Is that true?
Mr. Chairman, do you want
If you have the answer,
I can
please
tell
go.
you that I know it's Hart InterCivic, not
Intercivic,
Interactive,
thank you.
but Hart InterCivic was present that night. I don't know of any others that were there that night, not any other.
Maybe if this would go to Mr. Pollock of the clerk's office, were there any other third-party consultants outside of clerk or IT?
We'll get the answer for you.
Okay. I've asked for the slide showing the flow of the USBs, if that could be put back up for a question later. But I want to go back to, I know a discovery recounts were used. And is there any outstanding litigation or causes of action as a result of the Kane County handling of the consolidated election this year? Is there anything that's in the courts right now concerning a full recount? I know discovery stays internal, but outside of the discovery recounts, are any ongoing causes of action?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
Okay. There was mention to the realignment or the redistricting as a contributor to the issues. Is this, to be very clear, is this having to do with the precinct realignments that were done in early 2022? Or is there some other realignment that we're unaware of?
So to my understanding, when they had to go through everything, we have 192 precincts. Of those 192 precincts, we did have changes that occurred. And when they were trying to link up all of the precinct changes within the Boston DFM system, there was something that caused this particular issue for the Hampshire Park and Fire. So I can't give you more of a description than that outside of the fact that once it was discovered, they realized what happened and they realized how to quickly fix it. And that's what they ultimately did. And they believe that that particular issue dealt more with the fact that every 10 years we have to go through redistricting, and every 10 years it's going to cause some sort of ripple effect.
Okay, so the ripple effect was not seen in the 2022 elections because the Hampshire Park District or Fire District were not on the ballot as a district within the election. Is that correct?
As a referendum question is what the issue was.
Okay. There was reference by one of the audience members to Cybersecurity Infrastructure Systems Administration, or CISA. And I'm curious, and that's a federal agency through the Department of Homeland Security. Are CISA standards utilized to conduct county elections by the clerk's office? The CISA or CISA standards?
Are you aware, Mr. Pollack?
We'll give you the answer. I'll find out and give you the answer.
Okay.
Okay. I asked for the projection to put up the follow through flow chart or lineage diagram, whatever you want to call it. I see the Tally computer, secured USB, Fusion, secured USB. So I'm just confused. Maybe I'm just not understanding this. Secured USB as in a secured USB drive, like a drive I have in my pocket, or secured USB, some other infrastructure tool that I'm just not seeing.
So this is the description that was given to me. And so the best that I can tell you is within the secured room, they have designated USB drives for this. And when I was in the room to view everything with Investigator Merritt, they had these designated and identified USB drives. What that meant beyond that in terms of security, I cannot tell you because again, my investigation was into whether or not the consolidated election results were correct. And so when I reviewed the raw data matched what was certified. So I didn't go in depth looking at these secured USB devices because the raw data matched what happened. So to me, it didn't matter what happened in between necessarily. Now it's a valid question that everybody has raised, so I don't want to minimize what has been said, but that was not my investigation, or that wasn't a scope of my investigation.
Okay, so probably just a couple on the chain of custody, either through a log, either through, knowing in practicing law, what is evidence that is appropriate. If you had to do a USB and know who handled it, could there be a way to prove that in a cause of action if that should ever come to that? So it sounds like right now we're not clear. I know it was not in your scope, but that is something that you'll follow up with there.
It's on my list.
Excellent. The training of election judges and poll watchers. When I heard how that was described earlier, it sends me, I guess this just goes back to my Latino roots and the barrios, because poll watchers, how do you tell a poll watcher apart from an election judge?
It's my understanding it's the documentation that they wear, because an election judge has certain documentation that they have to wear and a poll watcher has certain documentation they have to wear.
Can you describe what the poll watcher documentation is that they wear?
To my we have an example.
Mr. Roth.
I was an election judge this last election, and you have a unique ID that is produced by the county clerk, and we're required to wear them. And if you notice, there's a big red R on that. So I was a Republican judge. Poll watchers do not have these at all. They basically, there's nothing issued that officially that identifies them.
Okay, back in the old days in the pre-21st century, when I did do poll watching, we had to wear a big red name tag, as some are saying. Is that still the requirement now? Okay. I get concerned, and I ask, when it comes to the training of poll watchers and election judges, which the state's attorney has said she's going to be overseeing more closely, I have had experiences with combative poll watchers. Some have shouted out commands to voters in the polling place. And since I'm somewhat educated, I see that there are poll watchers saying, I'll listen to the judge, not a poll watcher. Now, the average voter does not know that. So I would ask, because there's so much going on with many issues where things like coercion and voter intimidation. And I just want to ensure that poll watchers are properly trained so there is no confusion. And Madam State's Attorney, you will oversee that and ensure that there's no crossing or blurring of any lines when it comes to voter intimidation.
Yes, that is my promise as a result of all of this, is to be a part of the training, to review any manuals that are done, and to have extra staffing during early voting and on voting day, so that if there is an issue, we are physically responsive to see what is happening so that we can make sure that this isn't happening.
Okay. Earlier, there was a reference to the 11th Congressional District and two candidates who was brought up, and I know that was not purview of your current discovery, but you're going to do that follow-up because in preparation for the 2024 election cycle, the 11th Congressional District will again be on the ballot and there. So just, sorry, these are copious notes here. So let me find my other questions and I'm almost done. It's just a litigation. Finally, just the bottom line question, just to repeat, based on all of your findings, in spite of what happened on election night with reporting, the integrity of the Kane County elections for the consolidated election of April 4th is 100% secure. And since there's no litigation, nobody has taken the county or anybody to court over this.
Yes,
Excellent. Thank you so much.
thank you.
Hello, I'm Russ Nines. I have one more question, actually, two. What was the name of the consulting group that we utilized during that process?
I believe there wasn't a consulting group, but Hart Intercivic is the election manufacturer that we
So it's a
vet with.
representative from.
Support staff from the main company that we
Okay.
purchased from.
Okay, the other question I had, since there's two spots where a physical human removes a USB stick, walks across a room to whatever distance that is, but plugs it in. Are we taking ESD precautions? That's electrostatic discharge. I'm sure we've all walked across the room and touched the doorknob and got zapped, right? Well, every time you move in your chair or get up or move, you generate that energy. And it is very easy to damage a USB stick with ESD. So, and it's not hard to protect against it, but you have to do some physical things like a wrist strap or proper certain shoes, things of this nature that mitigate the static electricity. Otherwise, you can damage that device. And I've seen it happen time and time again. So I just wanted to ask whether that ESD precautions are included in the process of this, because if there's human handling of a data item, you have to put that in place to protect it.
And that's a great question, one of which, again, I don't have the answer, but I will make a note of it. My scope was related to the final result.
Sure, I understand.
But that is a great question. So it's
It
noted.
sounded like you were fielding information of this sort, so that's why I
Right.
wanted to ask that.
Well, and that was sort of related to, it was related to a statement I made before. Mr. Shepherd wanted to make sure that I put out there that we've agreed to provide training for the election judges with the county clerk's office, but I am also agreeing to provide training to any poll watcher that wants to. Poll watchers don't have to take our training, but I would be more than willing to provide information about that. So that was unrelated to yours.
Right.
But I did want to explain what that conversation was, but the ESD is a great question that we will pose also.
That would have to include training of the individuals using it, because the way you do it is part of the protection. So thank you.
Thank you.
Other questions, sir?
Actually, some answers, since Mr. Avalar was asking some questions. Just wanted to clarify, poll watchers aren't required by law to have a name tag or any kind of thing on them, but the county does have a sticker name tag that they provide as long as they can find it in the tub. And there was something else. Oh, the statutory requirement related to having poll watchers in places like the rally station. Please look, but I don't think you're going to find anything that stops us from being there. The statement is observing all facets of the election process, so that certainly would be part of it. So.
For anyone that has a question at this time?
Mr. Chair, I have a question.
Mr. Williams.
You know, these fine folks have been coming to our committee for, I don't know, 3 months now, and they're asking a lot of good questions and they're engaging in a public forum in discourse, and this is great. But, you know, a lot of the questions that they have still are not being answered, and those need to be answered by the clerk's office, and they're being told, we'll get back to you. And I think that's a shame, frankly, that we're still asking for questions. But my question, for Ms. Mosser is, I'm trying to understand, I've asked this question a couple times. What authority do we as a board have to control the manner in which the clerk conducts his elections, or to make sure that the procedures that the clerk's office is committed to be put in place is actually followed?
It's a really good question. We don't. He has internal control, and Jack Cunningham is charged with the duty to run the elections and to run the elections with integrity. My role in this has very simply been to do this inquiry into whether or not the results as certified by Mr. Cunningham were tampered with in any way, or were they valid? And I've found through my inquiry that they are in fact valid. I have had good conversations with members of his office, including him, and I have offered my services through the state's attorney's office, that of my civil division, who work really hard with the election process to see how we can help out. And they have willingly agreed to participate or to partner with us in regards to that. And so I'm pleased to see that. But other than that, if the county clerk's office makes a decision in regards to that, we're bound by that decision. Now, I can obviously come in and do any inquiry if there's an issue with it, but other than that, there's very limited control that we have by statute.
Thank you.
My name is Michelle Batag. I'm in St. Charles. My first question is, how old are the machines that we are currently using?
That would again be for the county clerk's office. I don't have an answer to that question.
Mr. Pollock, how old are the machines?
Do you know offhand, Mr. Pollack? Or Mr. Fonstock? Or Mr. Lasky?
Anybody? No?
Sorry. I'd have to go back and verify exactly, but I think they were acquired sometime after 2005. And they've acquired some since then, to some additional machines when we took on the Aurora Election Commission. There were some purchased at that time too. So it's a couple different periods of time after 2005. But it was also coincided with the Help America Vote Act, I believe. So.
How many election judges are there in Kane County on election day?
Mr. Roth, do you know the answer to that off the top of your head? Sometimes you got. the
No,
facts.
I do
Okay.
not. There's supposed to be both Republican and Democrat election judge at every precinct. And sometimes we've had issues, right? That's been discovered.
Yeah.
I think Andro made a comment.
I guess, so yes, we've been coming for several months, and I mean, it's disrespectful in my eyes to see that the clerk won't show up to these meetings, not once. And then he sends his office, and they don't know any answers either. I travel all over the country and talk to people, and they have no confidence in their elections. It's laughable from both parties at this point. 2020 disaster, 22 disaster, and here we come in again. It's already 24. I mean, I have utmost respect for the investigator and the state's attorney. They're doing their job, but that isn't their expertise. Everyone has their expertise, and the staff here for the election staff isn't here. We have these people who take off work and they want answers. It's not just us. It's not people coming in 100-200 people. It's everywhere you go. It's laughable. It's a joke. Do we have any way of knowing the new machines? He wants to buy new machines. Is there any talk or any plans for the new machines? I think they're looking to buy the same ones as Will County possibly. Is that rumors? Is that true?
There is nothing set in stone at this time. They're looking at an upgrade with the current company, Hart, that we use. But no decision.
Is that affiliated with the Alliance?
No.
So that Civic is not, whatever, Hart and our Civic is not related to the Alliance in any way, no affiliation?
No, it is not.
Okay. So, I'm hearing prices of about 7 million to 11 million. I mean, I just to do the raw math. I mean, if you had 700 election judges on election day, I got paid $250 for the 15 hours I worked. You know, that's 175,000. We could do a lot of hand counting for 175,000. So do we know is it in the works that the machines are being purchased? Are we negotiating with the company?
To my knowledge, there's only been a quote obtained. I don't have any other.
A quote. So
information.
do we know how much it is?
I don't know the exact cost. I believe around $7 million is the number. we've
Okay.
seen.
So why isn't there a staff from the election department here when we're having this meeting and people are taking off work? And it's disrespectful. It looks horrible. I mean, I know some of you board members are probably in agreement with us. Either party, it's disrespectful. And I feel that you guys, you know, some people just are not, you know, doing their duty and checking in, checking out, looking around how everyone's voting or however, you know, it's just not fair to the citizens. It's not just this room full of people. It's looking bad. And we have a huge election that's coming up. And I mean, from when I'm gathering on the street, people are not going to be okay with this kind of, you know, mediocrity. You know, it's just keeps going on. And the questions that some of these people have, there's a lot of technical people out there, you know, and I don't know why we can't just get rid of the machines. People are capable. Thank you.
I don't know why election staff isn't here. I assumed they would be, so I apologize. I threw a party and forgot to invite some guests apparently. I did email the clerk's office while we were sitting here, encouraging him very strongly to send somebody over. So if somebody comes into the room huffing and puffing because they ran here, then you know that's somebody that's going to have some answers for you. Hopefully they do arrive, but if not, we're going to do our best to get those follow-up answers for you.
Hey, Jared, good afternoon. Brian Anderson, Sugar Grove. I stood up because of the gentleman in the back, right there. What's your first name?
Mr. Williams?
Rick Williams.
I want to thank Rick for making the comment. Because that's my sentiment completely. This is my fourth time up here. And Jamie, I'm glad you're here today as well. Thank you for coming. It's the Q&A part right now still. So how many days back did everybody know that we were going to be meeting today?
You mean specifically when was this meeting set?
Correct.
I would say the day before it was posted online.
So you're all here. Why is no one here from the election from Jack's office?
I don't have that answer.
So I got to go back, right? It's the broken record, but this is, Jamie, this is the mission and vision statement of Kane County government, right? The mission of Kane County government is to be accountable for the citizens. That's where I got to stop, being accountable. So my last 3 times here, I listened, I spoke, and I left. Last board meeting, I stayed to the very end. And I saw something. I saw some dialogue going on with the board members, talking to you going, we should be upfront with them. We should tell them that there's nothing we can do. We should tell them, Jared, that Jack's office isn't supervised by the board, and everybody sheepishly is making comments. So I left Friday morning, called the State of Illinois Election Commission. Here's who I am. Here's what's going on. Give me the procedure and protocol. Brian, that's out of our jurisdiction. We don't supervise. We can't do a recall. There are no recall forms. You need to call the Kane County Clerk's office. So I did. Got a great gentleman on the phone, Fabian Franco. He's the supervisor of elections. Brian, there is no recall sheet, so we, the people of Kane County, you can't recall Jack Cunningham. Okay. What's plan B? Well, vote him out the next election. Okay. We don't have the time. All right. So I said, who supervises Jack? Who's his team leader, right? Who manages him? Who holds him accountable? You know, Brian, that's a great question. Let me get back with you. He did. Okay, and I'm thankful. He got back with me before the end of the day. Are you ready? Brian, Jack Cunningham is accountable to we the people here, us, the citizens of Kane County. And oh, by the way, which I thought was interesting, and I've got the email here, and I'm glad Jamie was here. Brian, if you have any additional questions, follow up with the state's attorney. So I'm just wondering why there's a dotted line to Jamie, because where the rubber meets the road, if he's accountable to no one, but accountable to we the people, but he's never here, no one's here, they're not on the screen, no one from the team, all you people on the board that have some knowledge can't answer the questions. I'm not blaming anybody. What I'm suggesting is you get the people in the room that make the decisions, know the procedures, and know the process. So I'm glad you're here, Jamie. I'm begging you as a citizen of Kane County, if there's an influence aspect to your role, Jack should be here. Now, I also want to make a praise, because one of the board members at the end of the meeting said, well, you know what? If any of those people want to go over to Jack's office, I'll take them over there myself. I called Vern. I called him, shot him an email. We exchanged 2 emails and a phone call. Thankful. Okay, I took him up. I didn't know if he was serious, but I took him up on that comment. And lo and behold, on June 5th at 1 o'clock, myself and a few other people, don't know what it's going to look like, but we're going to get a chance, I'm hopeful, to speak with Jack and to try to get some answers. And so while I'm here, public on the record, if he can't do the job that he's elected to do, I am calling for his resignation and would hope everybody behind me would be doing the same. Wrap up here, because the mission of Kane County government is to be accountable to the citizens in providing and being accountable. I was here the last board meeting, and I brought up the fact that if true, right, if Madam Chair, which she's here today, if she did encourage, hey, let's vote, we should censor this. There's no place for censorship in any municipality, in any county, in any state in the United States. So I would like to ask her if she would be willing to publicly apologize for even making that kind of a statement or comment. Would you care to, if that's what you said? Censorship? Oh, it certainly is necessary, because we the people.
Hold on.
That's okay, my friend.
One
We
speaker.
the people will hold those elected accountable. It says it right on their vision and mission statement. So I'll leave you with that, Madam Secretary. You can look bewildered, but will you be willing to speak up right now about the potential of censoring public comments? Just curious. Thank you, Jared.
Hello, my name is Tom Matson. I was born and raised in Geneva. Ms. Mauser, back in March, you sat here and you turned to the board, and with regard to the election so-called integrity money, the $2 million, and I believe that I heard you, as well as everyone else, said that the county board had the authority to reject or use the money. Is that true?
So during that time period, when we had been provided the document, it is my legal opinion that that agreement is binding on the county. The agreement was signed by Mr. Cunningham. The advice then provided after that is what parts actually bind the county. And I know that I'm kind of sort of answering your question, but not answering your question because you asked whether or not the county board can reject or accept it. Mr. Cunningham accepted something that's also binding on the county, which means the county would have to accept those portions.
Did he have the authority to accept that agreement,
He had
those
the,
monies?
he had the authority to accept money. However, he does not have the authority to bind the county to do certain things.
So why can't it be overturned by the board?
I'm not saying that it can't. It could be. That is not something that has been posed to my office by the board to do.
What would it take for the board to overturn those monies so that the county does not receive those monies?
So at this point, I believe it would have to be a board action or a board resolution for them to be able to do so.
Is the board willing to do that? Is the board willing to operate in integrity? Is the board willing to stand up? Are you? Are you willing to stand for the people and make this right? I pray to God you do. You do.
Is that a threat? Do not threaten my life.
Please,
Don't stay for outside. Don't you threaten.
excuse me, gentlemen. Excuse me, gentlemen. I don't want to have anyone removed at all whatsoever. Sir, please refrain from interrupting. We're okay. We're okay, but we're not going to have any more of that. We're all going to be respectful with each other. And that's all there is to it. We're okay.
Yeah, so I'm asking, we're at many citizens
sir, can you
are asking
pause?
the board.
Pause for a second, please. Are we good? Are we good? Yeah.
No, he's good. He doesn't need to threaten somebody to sit afterwards. He's gonna handle it.
Sir. All right, I'm sorry. He's gonna have to be removed. He's gonna have to be removed. Unf- unf-
Sir, can you please move from the podium for a second?
No, I haven't done anything wrong. He threatened my life. It's on camera.
Excuse me, sir. Sir, is my job.
But I'm still here to speak as a citizen. No. I'm here to speak with these people. No, you're being asked to interrupt them. Excuse me. I asked this man to not threaten my life. If you're not taking that serious, that is on camera and recorded. I don't appreciate that. Just because his supporters say he didn't threaten me, he said word for, no, you're not, because you're pushing me and I don't feel comfortable.
Sir, I think you have a misunderstanding of how public meetings work. And as the chairman of this proceeding, I do have the power and authority to maintain order. If you want to maintain silence from now on for the rest of this meeting, I will allow you to stay, but one more outburst, and I'm sorry, we're going to have to clear that section and these deputies will remove you physically.
Nobody needs to threaten me.
Sir, excuse me, this is not a negotiation. I'm being very nice. One more outburst. Okay. Sir.
Jay.
That's it. Please remove him from the building.
I have full confidence in the votes and election systems here. This is the same stuff that you guys did during the Trump election. And I'm saying, fuck Trump.
Hey, we now return to our regularly scheduled broadcast.
Thank you. For the record, I didn't threaten him. So Ms. Mosser and the board, we're asking you to take the next step and vote that the monies that were given to you are not used. So thank you very much. I appreciate your time. God bless you.
Just, did you have a question?
I do. when these meetings started originally, we had asked a simple question regarding the grant as to who the grant was made out to. And there was some conversation that the language in the grant said the county, but the check was made out to the clerk. Do you have a ruling on that and the determination?
Yes, the grant was, per the agreement, the grant is given to the county. It was accepted by the clerk. I don't know what the check looked like because I wasn't privy to any of that. But I can tell you that it's the county that the grant was given to.
So would by that logic, is it our ability, the 24 board members, to either accept this or reject the grant? Because I don't remember being part of that.
And you were not. The documentation was signed by the county clerk's office. The wording is what was a concern to my office, which is what we brought to the board upon request to review this. We have provided legal advice about what portions of the document itself are binding on the county, and we have provided that legal advice. What occurs from this point forward then is either by the county clerk or by the county board, considering the fact that the county board is bound by a portion of the agreement that was signed.
I guess my question is, if he's not authorized to act on our behalf, what are you talking about?
Is it valid?
Yeah, is it
Yeah,
valid?
that's is it even valid?
I mean, I don't get this. That's just, I'm simple. I'm sorry.
And we're not really here to talk about that, but it is somewhat a related issue. That's why I'm allowing it.
No, and I understand. And Mr. Sturgis, your questions are great, and I would never describe you as simple. Part of my hesitation in being able to answer completely is that, as everyone may or may not be aware, I am the attorney for the board. I'm the attorney for elected officials. And when there's certain things that are asked to me by me of Mr. Cunningham, I have attorney-client privilege with him. Now, the information that I've discussed now is information that we have discussed at the request of Mr. Cunningham in other board meetings. What I can tell you right now is that Mr. Cunningham does not have the authority to bind the board to do anything. So even if he signed a document that says, I bind the board to do so-and-so, it doesn't make it binding on the board. There's a whole lot that goes in there with contractual law, so some of it may be valid, some of it may not be valid. I am more than happy to do that full review and to provide a full report to the county board, which I assume this is the request that you are making to me now, Mr. Sturgis, which we will happily undertake and report back to the full board.
I'd additionally like that request of Madam Chair to have that on the next agenda, although I don't know where that agenda should start. Would that be a board agenda, an executive agenda?
Madam Chair.
If I may, it should come through public service because that's who he reports to. That's how we first out about the grant through your committee and then let it go up the food chain through exec, et cetera.
And I would request that be placed on agenda for the next.
No. Just kidding, kidding. So we're still in question and answer. Just keep that in mind. I know it's kind of blending with public comments at times. So hopefully that means the public comment portion will be a little shorter, but
Okay,
questions?
well, I'll be short here. Jane Beckelman, South Elgin currently. I have a comment here that I see the machines, the voting machines and the whole system as being very expensive. And there's numerous ways in which they can either break down, human error, outside interference, which I know we're not saying today that's what it is, but moving forward, things are getting more and more complicated and harder to navigate for the average person. So we're just relying on, technical experts. And so, and I know there's not a perfect system, like any system can have a failure. So I'm not, in any way implicating that I think we can find perfection here. But I mean, I'm just wondering I don't know if you guys make the decision or not. I feel like we're putting a lot on you that you may or may not even make the decisions for. But I mean, are we willing to look at paper ballots is my question.
I will bring that up with the clerk's office, with the
Okay.
clerk himself.
All right, thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Jim Whittington. Since we just had this resolution about another meeting with Jack, my understanding is that what, 650,000 roughly of the $2 million grant has already been received. Anybody tell us whether any of the 650 has been spent and how much? And if not, that there be a directive that not one penny of it be spent until the board makes a final decision on the matter. Because I don't want you guys coming back and saying, well, we can't give the money back because we spent it already. Or maybe we should take it out of Jack's salary, one of the two. So.
To answer in short, the money has not been spent at this time. It's housed in a fund.
I don't think that's true. Tom Matson, just a quick follow-up. Many counties around the nation are turning to paper ballots. The entire nation of France uses paper ballots. 40+ million people, just an FYI. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, follow up to that, maybe to the state's attorney or to the two co-chairs of legislative. Does the Illinois current state law, which governs elections, does the state law allow for the use of totally paper ballots within a local election authority? Does state law allow it?
I'm seeing Mr. Shepro shake his head, but
Okay, so no other county like DuPage County or no other, I mean, I know there are 108 election authorities, but do the law, Ms. Gums, you say something?
I don't have the answer to that at this time, but I'll get back to you on it.
Okay, also with the I know the legislative agenda is going to be developed now that you're going to work it through a lobbyist. At the state level, there was talk this past spring session about new items like ranked choice voting and the integrity questions that will bring. So if there is some spillover from what's been happening with April 4th, that could be something that the public will want to discuss through legislative part of the county's legislative agenda through the state, since the state does set the law for elections. And finally, is there any talk about going to all mail-in balloting at the state level? I only bring that up because if this county is about to invest in voting equipment that may no longer be allowed to be used, that's millions that we're trying to save the county taxpayers, and that's all through the state that will make the decision, the ultimate decision to go that route. So I just want to bring that up. Well, Mr. Tepe.
Mr. Tepe, do you have an update on that?
Yes. Tepe here.
And bring your microphone a little bit closer. That way. Thank you.
Tepe here. I did ask that question of a key legislator just within the past couple of weeks, and there's no discussion about that going on.
Thank you.
Okay, I know there's a lot of election related questions we all have, and we've collected some really good information and things to get follow up on. If we could try and just keep the questions related to the 2023 consolidated election, that'd be just in the interest of our time. Thank you.
So the terms of the clerk's office, I believe that they can be changed through county ordinance. I was wondering maybe someone on the board might want to take that up and see what could be explored for that.
Does anyone else have a question at this time?
Oh.
Okay, please come up to the microphone, sir, and state your name again.
Just for clarification, what was the name of the consulting firm again? I always say, I speak 4 languages and I can't seem to say that name.
It's HART, H-A-R-T, and then it's InterCivic,
InterCivic.
I-N-T-E-R-C-I-V-I-C.
They're the vendor. I know who they are. Let me continue, Ken. Mrs. Moser, do you still have some of that paperwork that was given to you by Stephanie a couple years back?
I do, yes.
Okay. So, and there's a lot of people in this room that keep on hearing about grants and grants, but maybe some don't realize that it's not so much the money in the grant, but it's the companies that they're coming from, this US Alliance Group. And so when we get a chance, maybe we can take a look through that paperwork and maybe we can see this consulting company and who exactly they're tied in with.
Sure, I kept all the documents that she gave me because we were supposed to have a follow-up and never did.
Okay, yeah. I just want to make sure that, you have that one particular document that shows that they're a subsidy or were a subsidy of Dominion.
Sure.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other questions before we move on? All right, thank you all for participating in this. It's not something that is typically done, especially at local government or maybe any level of government, really. But I want to thank State's Attorney Mosser for specifically requesting that we do this. And well, for taking your time out of your day and keeping the pressure on. And obviously, we weren't able to get all of the answers to all of our questions today, but we will follow up with those as soon as we have them. And I will definitely keep the pressure on to get those answers. So with that being said, we'll move on to public comments. And again, I know some of us have already delivered comments. So if you've already done that, there's no need at this time, I would say. But if you have a public comment you would like to deliver at this time, please approach the podium. And I don't know if there's anyone online, ma'am.
I think they signed up.
Oh, okay. I know some people signed up, but they have already come up. So I'm not even going to read names. Just come up
That's
if
fine.
you'd like to. Just state
That's
your name
fine.
and
All right, good afternoon. My name is Blanca Souders, and I was born and raised in Kane County. In fact, where I grew up was at 719 Kane Street in Aurora. And for those of you from Aurora, you understand where Kane Street is. And back then, we had a beautiful life there. We were all different nationalities, and we grew up like a little United Nations. And I appreciate that. And I graduated from East Aurora. And I've been attending these meetings for months. And I asked myself, why? This gets me. Well, the answer is my 4 little granddaughters who have the right to grow up as their fathers did in a small little town called Caneville on a farm and have the best life growing up. Having said that, I too am Hispanic. Oh, sorry. I too am Hispanic. Mexican, actually, is what I call myself. My father was a precinct committee man on the east side of Aurora. He was very involved in Aurora politics to the extent of introducing John Kennedy at a labor union rally when he came to Aurora. He made sure that the Hispanics were able to go vote every election day. He would pick them up, he would take them, and I'm sure probably give them a little advice, but that goes with that without saying. That is why I am so upset with what has transpired here with the integrity of the elections. Election integrity is very important. It means how you live your lives. We all want to have integrity. All of you were elected to maintain the integrity in our elections. The Hispanic people have the right to have people on this board to look after their beliefs and respect their morals. We have asked you for an explanation to what happened with this past election. No, this was before you did what you did. So no answers are forthcoming. You can scratch that out. In closing, I will continue to attend these meetings in hopes that truth prevails. I am signing up. I've been asked to be an election judge this summer. So I'm looking forward to meeting with you and being able to do that. I also was the poll watcher this last election. And for the most part, everything went well. Everybody got along. We were taught well. And in fact, I volunteered my services in DuPage County when they had re-election, what do you call it? Recount. Thank you. The recount, and I went and volunteered one day to help them with their recount. So I, in my heart, think this will prevail and we will have a good place in Kane County. So all I want to say, que Dios los bendiga a todos. Thank you very much.
Are there any other public comments at this time?
Hello, some of these things have been addressed, some of them haven't, so I'll just read the thing out. My name's Bruce again. I've been a resident of Kane County for 36 years. Normally, I wouldn't get up and speak at a meeting, but I feel so strongly about what is happening in this county, that I'm compelled to do so. Today, I didn't know if this special meeting would be set up as a question and answer session, or like prior meetings where we are allowed to voice our concerns and the board decides what they would prefer to respond to and what the board would prefer not to respond to. I mentioned this because I thought that we had asked several times that we would like to participate in the discussion regarding the solutions. At the March 14th board meeting, we brought to the board our concerns regarding the $2 million U.S. Alliance Election Excellence Award that Jack Cunningham accepted and our desire for the county to return the money and reject the award. At that March 23rd Public Service Committee meeting, Jared Sanchez told us at the beginning of the meeting that the county had two options. Neither of the options included returning the money or rejecting the award. Does the Kane County Board understand that this response did not take into consideration any of our comments or concerns from that meeting? Why was there not a third or fourth option from Mr. Sanchez that included returning the money or rejecting the award? Since that first meeting, several community members have suggested that there are serious questions as to whether the funds already distributed or are associated with binding or executable contract. At very least, this is extremely troublesome. At the April 11th board meeting, immediately following the spring consolidated election debacle on April 4th, a community member made a request of the board that an outside investigation of the entire election be conducted. And a second community member asked for a hand recount and a forensic evaluation versus a recount and a retabulation. That's all we've got. Following that meeting, we learned that the county chose to ignore those requests and conduct an internal investigation, which included a recount and retabulation, go through the same count of your machines, of only 18% of the entire election. Additionally, we learned that this was done by 2 of the 25 Kane County board members, Madam Chair and Jared Sanchez. Why do we have a 24-person board if only 2 members are making such a serious and important decision regarding election integrity? That comes back to what you said, sir, about why wasn't I included in some of these decisions? This action was pure arrogance and clearly demonstrates that we need a much smaller board. At this point, we have made several requests, and to date, the items that I have noted, we, the people of Kane County, feel as if the county board, with a primary focus on Madam Chair and Jared Sanchez, along with Jack Cunningham in his office, are merely trying to pacify us rather than work with us as our constituents to come up with answers we could trust. Again, pure arrogance. Thank you.
I am Kathy Showalter. I have lived in Geneva most of my life. Actually, only 3 years. Next week, I'll be 69. You do the math. Okay. When I was young, I looked forward to being able to get old enough to vote. Why? Because I was always always interested in voting. Okay. I like the fact you watch the tallies come in that night or 3 nights later, we had winners. We didn't have to wait 18 days, 24 months, whatever it takes. Okay. Today I come and ask you please to go back to paper ballots. I ask to go back to paper ballots. Why? Voting is not about one political party. 2 parties are involved. That's a good thing. I have a choice who I vote for. I respect that. My vote counts, and I've always believed that. The facts show computers can and do manipulate votes. They manipulate votes. Votes can be changed by computers in a matter of seconds. It happens. Paper ballots have to be hand counted. Hand counted. So the results are determined basically on election day, counted the same day we vote. Pretty simple. The real bonus I feel to paper ballots is saving Kane County or would be saving Kane County machines, the cost of machines. I was told by Jack Cunningham, Mr. Cunningham himself, he was going to get us paper ballots. The last meeting, the first meeting in March, I was one of the 3 women that knocked on his door after the meeting here to find out why he wasn't sitting in our chair, so we could get answers from this man. Guess what? He was watching it on Zoom. He invited us in, security followed us in, and there we all were on the damn Zoom screen. Thank you, Mr. Cunningham. I hope you're listening today because we want you here. Thank you for answering some of these questions, but the answers are not finished. We will not go away. We want this fixed, okay? We don't want to go on to the next election and deal with what we're dealing with. It can be fixed. Therefore, I ask the board, okay, Mr. Cunningham, please give the money back. Do not take the money. We, as residents at Kane County, we got money. We got lots of money. Today is our major tax day, right? Did everybody pay their taxes today? I hope so, because otherwise you're going to be paying a penalty, right? Penalties count. Anyway, I have one more thing to say. I have voted for Jack Cunningham in the past. Couple of his elections, I voted for him. I know his son. However, I am not voting him in next time. And I would ask that we all fire him. Fire him. He's a coward. He should be here. And I'm not trying to harass him. We want him here. Stand up, come to the table, talk to us, answer our questions. That's all. Thank you.
Hi, Steve Brieswitz. I'm from St. Charles. I'm the St. Charles Township Democrats chairperson, and I realize I'm vastly outnumbered by the people behind me, and I've got some friends up in front of me and some people who don't know who the heck I am, which is fine. I'm here for the same reason that all these people behind me are too. There's a microphone and there's a camera right there that I'm talking to, and board members can't really censor me or shut me up, and I get to have free use of the mic. So paper ballots and hand counting. Having been involved in politics for 25 years, I was here when we used to use punch card ballots. It was a blizzard of paper. There were hand tallies and it was just nuts. It would go on to 4 or 5 in the morning on frequent occasions, just because it took that long. And this was with the punch card, which is faster than if you were hand counting someone's handwritten ballot or hand marked ballot. $7 million might seem like a lot of money, but we've been using the Hart InterCivic for over 20 years. Incidentally, it's at least 20 years ago when we purchased the system, it was a Republican owned and operated company. I don't know if that's still true. But the elections we have now are accurate. Just the fact that we did recounts, 2 recounts, and came up with the same questions. We didn't have, if we had had a thumb drive that had somehow some magneto magic electrical shock to it, we would not have come up with the same number twice in a row for the same count. They're accurate. They're fast compared to pen and paper counting. Part of the reason we don't know for 2 weeks is because of state law that this board cannot affect, is because we accept mail-in ballots for 2 weeks. To paper recount by hand, the size of Kane County would take literally thousands of people, because you have to have a Democrat and a Republican and probably a person from the clerk's office on hand. So 3 people on hand to do the count of every ballot. That's going to take probably 4 or 5 times as long as it does now. And when you take that $7 million over 20 years of a expected lifespan of a computer system for running ballots, it would be a bargain. I just hope the board takes my concerns into consideration as well. These people are here because they want to look a lot bigger than they are. They may be the majority in this room, but clearly they're not the majority in Kane County because Republicans have been slowly losing ground, and that's probably their major complaint. Thank you.
Any other public comments before we move on? Ma'am?
My name is Terry Bauer, and I talked earlier about the USB drives. And I just wanted to make sure that everyone understands the chain of custody issue. And just to be clear about it, chain of custody is the tracking of all items and is such as ballots and machines through their collection, safeguarding, and analysis life cycle by documentation of each person who handled that ballot or machine or item, because a ballot is evidence, as well as the date and time it was collected and transferred and the purpose of that transfer. And like I said before, according to CISA, Cybersecurity Infrastructure and Security Agency, physical items like voting machines and ballots must have a process, a paper trail that documents control and transfer of all equipment and materials, as well as all digital records such as transmissions and records, including all transfers of all digital information, including all USB flash drives. All equipment must be kept secure, and it is crucial to know where it is, who is using it, and who is being passed on to, as well as the time that it was passed on and the place that it was passed to. And I guess I'm just going to end by saying everything, I think, other than a paper clip has to have and I'm being a little bit facetious with that, but I suppose pens and pencils could be excused too. But anyway, everything needs to have a chain of custody. Thank you.
My name is Denny Seiler. I just have one quick question. The gentleman who was up here before said that we had a recount and they matched, so it has to be secure. But we recounted the same machine that could have made the mistake the first time. That's all I got to say.
Hello, Ken Zitko. St. Charles, lived in King County for 32 years. I didn't know how today would go, so I put together some comments, and now we've talked about a bunch of it. So I'm kind of filling in gaps and winging it a bit. But, you know, this has been kind of a rare opportunity to see things come together. We have, we just all happen to sort of be here talking about the award, and then we have this election happen. And Brian mentioned talking to Vern. I had an opportunity to talk to Vern yesterday too, and I talked to Jamie last week. So I kind of knew what we were coming to see and what the explanation was. And I think it's important to understand that I don't think any of us came here expecting to change the outcome of the election or even, you know, one of the races in the election. The point is getting to the bottom of what's really happening with our elections and then having an honest conversation about it as we evaluate this thing that's being presented to us as an award for our excellent elections. So in talking to Vern, he explained that he thought, you know, it was recognition. This money is recognition for what we've done in the past. And he shared knowing the people who work in the elections office, which unfortunately none of them chose to come today. So things don't look very good for them in the moment. And then we've got the election that just transpired. So that also doesn't help. But, you know, reflecting on it, you know, servers going offline, the lack of transparency until now, you know, I don't think anybody back here thinks we would have ever gotten an answer like this if we weren't all here for the past 3 months. So that is great. And we appreciate the effort and the investigation and the report and the answers. All of that's great, but it doesn't really come off as transparency because we had to work so hard to get it. If it was just brought to the public after the election happened, that would have been transparency. So we've talked a bit also about flash drives. Mark brought some flash drives for props, but I did too. So for anybody who doesn't know, a flash drive can be as little as this. And then the whole day I've been walking around with 2 of them in my hand. And unlike the guy in the orange hat, I was completely inconspicuous. Nobody knew I had them. I came up here more times than I expected to. It wasn't clumsy or awkward. They're just here. There's nothing to them. They're very small. And to answer some of the other questions that were asked today, I can tell you, you can load all kinds of stuff on these. Well, both of these are big enough to hold all of the state history and our voter roll for the state. So certainly the county would fit. One election would absolutely fit. So here I've got 2 of that in my hand. I could also load a whole operating system on one of these and stick it in a computer and boot to this instead of the hard drive. I could also install executable files that would run right away when I put the thing in and do whatever it was designed to do. And then maybe be invisible to somebody who looked at the drive, or load, unload data, all sorts of things. So they are small, and we talked about how they're vulnerable, which is true. It's just solid state memory. So static and all that kind of stuff can destroy it. I don't know what the phrase secure USB drive means. I mean, if it's encrypted, I guess that would be secure, but still, you know, I've got these 2. I don't know if anybody wants to try to bet me which one they think has data on it or not. They look exactly alike. There's no way to tell them apart. So, you know, that's a problem. And if my rambling isn't convincing and you want to see something more, there's a movie called Kill Chain that's available on HBO that HBO is a lefty organization. So it's not us making this video. It's a whole movie. It's like an hour-and-a-half long movie. And it's very interesting because it was back when Trump stole the 2016 election, when elections were super insecure. I know they're secure now, but if you want to go back in time and watch this thing, it's very convincing because there's a guy who takes one. It's not exactly like this. This is a slightly different card because different machines take different cards, but he never enters the room. He takes the card, he programs it, hands it to somebody else who then goes in the room, and they hold an election where they have just 7 people and they have paper ballots and they can all see it. And the result turns out they're supposed to be voting whether or not you could hack an election. 5 people were supposed to say yes and 2 were supposed to say no. And it turned out the results were 5-2 the opposite. So all because of what was put on the chip. So it's probably worth the time as we consider buying more election equipment. And I can share that there are teams of people, like others have discussed. I'm actually working with a number of people around the country who are process engineers who are working on building procedure and policy to do a hand-counted paper ballot election that would comply with our state's election code, be able to provide defensible results by the end of election night that had been counted more than once and validated with a complete chain of custody. So are you raising your hand?
Yeah, I have a quick question for you. Michelle Gums.
Hold on, Ms. Gums, if we can just let him finish his
Oh,
comment.
sorry.
Time is about to end.
So that's really the statements I wanted to make, and then just sort of tie that back to the idea that again, it's not about changing the results of this particular election. It's about trust in our elections. Us, not everybody here, but a bunch of us are politically involved. And I can tell you, it's shocking the number of people around Illinois who you tell them, I'm working with such and such candidate and you should vote for them. And their answer is, what for? I don't vote. They don't vote because they don't trust the election system in our county, in our state. And if we don't overcome that, we're never going to have the will of the people expressed. But we have 350,000 voters in Kane County. So a tiny, tiny fraction of us have now seen what happened in April. The rest of the ones who voted, which is only 10% because nobody cares to vote because they don't trust the elections. But of whatever group of people that is, most of them just think another weird thing happened. That's why they don't vote, or that's why they don't trust the election, or that's why they don't know if they should even bother. So as we reflect on all that and then think about this award we
Sir,
won.
if you could please
Yeah,
wrap up your
I hope
comment,
we,
please.
I hope we take the input we got today. I feel like we made a huge step forward on the grant. So hopefully we continue moving that way and back out of that arrangement.
You know what? I'll just ask
Yeah, if-
you afterwards.
I was gonna say, if
Yeah.
you
Okay.
guys,
Sorry
we're
about that.
past the question and answer portion, we really do need to kind of wrap up public comment section, just in the interest of everybody's time. Are there any public comments left before we adjourn?
It's Jim Whittington again. I just had this other quick thought. There's this overriding question about who does Jack report to? He appears to report to nobody. But doesn't the county, the council here, the board, don't they control the budget? And can't you just defund the clerk's office until he answers the questions? Defund Jack Cunningham. Thank you.
Well, there's a positive suggestion.
Any other quick public comments before we
no.
adjourn?
This should give these people one time to talk.
Jared Brian Anderson, Sugar Grove. I came up the first time because Rick spurred me on after his comment. I'm going to leave us with this. I'm looking at the press release. Now, this is November 28th, 2022 that he got the grant. Tomorrow, ladies and gentlemen, 7 months for a decision. Enough is enough. I spent 30 years in corporate America. My president would say, let's get this resolved in 7 days, maybe 7 weeks, not 7 months. Okay, I leave us with this, right? You're elected. We've already been over it now 3 times. You work for we the people. We are expecting, and I heard Jamie loud and clear, apparently there's some documents flying around. You've seen them. Jack's got them. I think we need to come to a decision. 7 months is unacceptable. Now I understand why people don't like politics. You come from the business world. I work in a world of instant results. This is absurd. Please, let's get this going. Let's not wait another 7 months.
And with that, that concludes our public comment section. Again, thank you everyone for being here and everyone on the board as well and staff for going through this. It's very good and helpful public discourse that we're having that again is very rare. It's not common that the people are allowed to interact with government in open session. Outside of meetings is different, but this has been good. I do want to just make one point. There was I think a misunderstanding that Madam Chair and myself were involved in some way with the investigation or the inquiry. That is not the case. We simply had a meeting with the clerk's office, state's attorney, just to determine what's going on. And at that meeting, it was determined that the state's attorney's office would conduct the inquiry that was reported on today. So just wanted to make that very clear. There was no board action involvement in that investigation. So with that, we have no need for executive session. There are no reports to place on file, so I'll take a motion and a second to adjourn.
Mr. Kenyon, you're up.
Kenyon's not on the crew.
Mr. Chair, in honor of Mr. Kenyon, I move for adjournment.
Second. All right, Ted moves, William seconds. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right.